Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT. thrivemarket.com/TCAT. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 331 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing all right. It's been a rough week. We lost our oldest dog, Bodie.
Yeah, rough time.
Yeah, rough time for the family. But, all the pet owners out there who have gone through that, they know what that's like. It's tough, but it's something you have to deal with. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Dave McMullen.
Hey, Dave.
Terry Justice.
What's going on, Terry?
Maria Lucas.
Hey, Maria.
She jumped out at our highest level.
That's awesome.
Pierce Franklin.
Hi, Pierce.
Amy Colombo.
What's going on, Amy?
Nagy Esther.
Hey, Nagy.
Victoria H.
I appreciate that, Victoria.
Heather.
Good old Heather.
Yep. Lissa Armour jumped out at our highest level.
Look at you, Lissa.
Basilio Gallo.
Ah, Basilio.
JH.
What's up, Jay?
Rachel jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Rachel, thank you.
Christine Akey.
Achy Breaky.
Grounded Tarot.
What's going on, Taro?
Annie and Jason Dillon.
Hey, there's the Dillons.
Selena.
Appreciate that, Selena.
Summer Connors.
Hey, Summer.
Jeannie Ote.
Oh, Ote.
Kelly Hogue jumped out at our highest level.
There's Hogue.
Was that you doing Eddie Murphy doing Gumby?
I did. Yes.
I kind of caught that. And last but not least, Anna Chambers.
Hey, Anna.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Lisa Sangalang.
Sangalang, that's a fun name.
Yeah, fun name to say. We also had a great PayPal donation from Teresa Fisher.
Awesome, Teresa.
But speaking of Patreon, on our weekly Patreon, I was telling a story about my dog Bodie.
Yeah.
And a lot of listeners will probably remember, but back early on, when you and I were doing the BTK episodes,
Sure.
I left the door open.
You did.
To the basement, and Bodie walked down, and you can hear him walking.
Tap dancing.
To kind of almost tap dancing for a while during that episode. And a lot of people brought it up back when it happened.
Yeah. Good memory.
Good memory. That was him.
Hey, real quick, CrimeCon, if you haven't signed up yet, go ahead and go out there, sign up, and use our code TCAT for a discount.
Yeah. You get 10% off your standard badge at crimecon.com. Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on Unsolved where we're talking about the 2007 disappearance of Lee Cutler. Lee was 18, a high school senior, spent the night with some friends, dropped a friend off after that, and then vanished. But they found his car.
Never found him.
No. But his car was found pretty far away.
Yeah.
From where he lived. So there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery. We'll get into all of it. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm ready.
We are talking about Melisa McManus, a person who listeners are going to hate by the end of this episode.
Absolutely.
Because on May 6th, 1993, an infant's body was found inside a trash bag along the Susquehanna River in York County, Pennsylvania. A month later, a 17-year-old girl named Melisa McManus was charged with murdering her own child, allegedly with the help of 3 accomplices. So we're kind of setting it up. We'll get into all the details. Melisa Ann McManus was born on June 28th, 1976. Before her arrest, Melisa lived with her grandmother, Betty McManus, in Holtwood, which is in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Melisa has a twin sister named Wendy and a younger brother named Scott. Now, you have brothers, but you don't have any twins, right?
No twins.
You're not a twin.
I'm not a twin.
Melissa's father is Roland Scott McManus. And according to the Intelligencer Journal, a local newspaper, Melisa was abandoned by her mother. A neighbor who asked to remain anonymous told the paper that Melissa's father was there sometimes, but it was Betty who raised the children. And this is something you hear quite a bit, right? Grandparents stepping in to help raise a child because one or both of the parents are not able to for different reasons. What I do think is different here is that you have the mother abandoning the children.
Right.
Not that it doesn't happen. Mothers do abandon their kids, but I think more often than not, you hear this about fathers. I think percentage-wise, more often it's a father who leaves than a mother.
Oh, the abandonment? Sure.
Yeah. Melisa didn't have the best home life, which was discussed at her trial. We'll get into that. She left school in the 9th grade and became pregnant when she was just 16 years old. Her boyfriend at the time was 19-year-old Tony Edwards. In 1992, Melisa told Tony, some friends, and a few family members that she was pregnant. Several of them saw changes in her body throughout the pregnancy, and she talked about the pregnancy and other topics like baby names. However, some individuals, like her father and grandmother, claimed that they weren't aware that Melisa was pregnant.
News to them.
Later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was news to them. And then suddenly in the spring of 1993, Melisa was no longer pregnant. And she gave a number of different explanations about where the baby was. And I mentioned it earlier, but on May 6, 1993, the body of an infant boy was found in a plastic garbage bag along the York County side of the Susquehanna River near the Normanwood Bridge. The infant was found after the water was lowered because below the Holtwood Dam to search for 2 missing fishermen. It was a man named Charles Coeman who found the baby around 10 a.m. He was there to see if he could find anything after the water level was lowered. He spotted a dark-colored upright bag tied shut. He kicked it and could tell something was inside. Gibbs, he opened it up and saw a baby's head inside. He thought it was a doll at first, according to the Intelligencer Journal. So, we talk about this quite a bit, right? An unsuspecting person finding a gruesome scene, a body, whatever it is.
Horrific.
And this one, they're not even looking for this infant. They're looking for 2 missing fishermen. That's what causes the water level to be lowered. And then this guy comes along and he's just kind of searching for, whatever he can find.
Yeah, he's just doing a little scavenger.
Yeah, I've
search.
actually done that myself at lakes where they lower the lake
Yeah.
in the wintertime. You can walk out and find fishing lures. You can find all kinds of good stuff. People drop, valuables things.
Well, there's that watch I dropped.
Yeah.
there's my sunglasses.
There's a wedding ring. No, you definitely can find things. And I'm sure that's what this guy was doing.
Never thought he'd find what he did.
No, absolutely not. When he got out of bed that morning, he thought, you know what? It might be a good day to go scavenging. Well, sometimes you find more than what you're prepared to find.
How do you get that out of your head?
I don't think you do. I don't think you do. And especially, because this was a very young infant baby. I mean, it's, the description that a lot of people give, because we've heard it time and time again, is I thought it was a mannequin.
Yeah.
Now here we're talking about a baby. So he said, I thought it was a doll's head.
Sure. Yeah.
That just really puts it into, some perspective. So he picked this bag up and carried it to a parking lot where some Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission officers were standing. He later told the Lancaster New Era, I told one of them there was a baby in the bag, and he laughed at me. He thought I was kidding, but when they looked in the bag, that ended that.
I bet it did. Real quick.
Now, I don't know what would cause somebody to laugh just because they thought he was joking around with them.
Probably thinking, that's unbelievable. You're crazy. There's no baby in that bag.
Well, I get it. I joke around. Everybody jokes around. To me, if somebody comes up and says that doesn't scream joke, funny, haha.
Yeah.
Especially if you're some sort of law enforcement officer, but I get it. That was his reaction. The infant was believed to be just a few days old. Lancaster County Coroner Dr. Barry Walt said he was born at full term and still had the umbilical cord attached. He estimated that he had been in the water for 2 to 4 days. But the autopsy failed to determine a cause of death. The police had hoped that the autopsy would determine if the infant was murdered, because I think right off the bat, his death was labeled suspicious.
Absolutely it was.
And how could it not be? When we talk about unsolved cases, okay, we're usually talking about somebody anywhere from 15 to whatever, 60, let's say, in that range. Could they have an accident? Could they be walking along a body of water, slip, hit their head and fall in?
Absolutely. It could happen.
That could happen. This is a very young baby. Most likely is not crawling out of the house to a body of water. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think you'd have to err on the side that this is a suspicious death. Something's not adding up here. Add on top of that the fact that the umbilical cord is still attached.
Yeah, that's the real thing, right?
That's got to really kind of cement it in the mind of law enforcement officials, because what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think you think right away that the birth of the baby didn't happen at a hospital, because that would have been taken care of. Right.
So that leads into a birth at home, a child not wanted, possibly. It leads you down those types of avenues. Wayne Ross, a forensic pathologist, determined that the infant was anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months old. Police in Lancaster and York counties were seeking information about any women who had recently had a baby and could not account for their child. Concerned citizens called the Lancaster State Police, which helped them obtain the names of 3 women who might have been the mothers of the unidentified baby. The 3 women lived in York and Lancaster counties. So I get it, right? This news gets out.
Sure.
People are concerned. They're horrified. But people came up with 3 names.
Really
quickly about, who the mother could have been. Now, one of these people is going to be right.
Yeah.
As we're going to find out. My thought is, though, what about the other 2?
I was thinking the same thing when we were doing the research. What about the other 2?
How did they come up with, well, it could be this person?
Yeah.
I always wonder about that in those situations. Did they have a vendetta against somebody? Somebody had wronged them. They were mad, so they were going to throw their name out to police. I don't know.
But you know how the public will treat this type of scenario, right? I mean, say the word baby was found dead, the public would come out more for that than they would any other type of case.
Yeah. I mean, you want people to call in tips. I just wonder how they arrived at the decision that these other 2 women could have possibly been the mothers of the baby. On June 29th, 1993, 17-year-old Melisa McManus was arrested and charged with criminal homicide and criminal conspiracy. Melisa turned 17 the day before her arrest. At a press conference on the 30th, Lancaster County DA Joseph Madenspacher said that Melisa killed the baby simply because she didn't want the baby, and said he was 100% positive she is the mother. This was according to the Lancaster New Era. Now, figuring out that she's the mother, that's not going to be too hard. Right? They can do a DNA test and prove that. Coming out and saying that she killed the baby because she didn't want it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So that has to come from maybe some interrogation, some talking, all of that.
It just frustrates me thinking about it. Just didn't want it. There's so many other
people that want a baby, would take that baby in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I know there's been some articles I read over the years that like some different municipalities say, if you don't want your baby, drop it off at the local firehouse. And at least the baby stays alive and they'll find a home for it. Just don't do something like this.
There are so many couples that can't have children, want children, would take that baby.
Yeah.
They'd be in their car driving wherever they had to go.
I know me and you've talked about the China Arnold case here in Dayton, Ohio, way back when.
Oh, one of the worst cases.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the baby was around 28 days old, and she decided she didn't want the baby, and she put it in the microwave.
Yeah. Just a horrible case.
Yeah.
At first, investigators couldn't determine if the baby was stillborn or if he was born alive, but Madenspacher said that the evidence showed the baby was born alive and suffocated. After the autopsy, investigators established an age range of 3 weeks to 3 months, but Madenspacher told the public that investigators determined this wasn't quite true. The evidence showed that the baby was probably disposed of within hours or within 1 to 2 days of being born.
Well, that makes sense to me, thinking that the umbilical cord is still attached. Mm-hmm. It's going to be kind of hard to hide a baby for 3 months.
Yeah, I thought that the 3 week to 3 month estimate seemed a little bit odd.
Yeah.
For someone who didn't want a baby, but yet felt as though they didn't want to go through the other options that were available and wanted to dispose of it, for the lack of a better term.
Right.
You would think that would happen very quickly in a matter of days if it was going to happen. Madenspacher described Melisa as a transient type person. At her arraignment on the 29th, she told a judge that she was unemployed and was not attending school. The district attorney announced that investigators believe the baby was born at her home in Holtwood and that she had gone to live with her stepmom in Reading. They also announced that they had identified the father, who was not a suspect. Madenspacher said that the police hoped to make more arrests in connection with the baby's death. So I think that clues you in right there that they were already on the track that she didn't do this by herself. She had help. She had accomplices. Tony Edwards, Melissa's boyfriend, did an interview with the Intelligencer Journal after Melisa was arrested. He talked about her pregnancy and their relationship. He said the last time he saw Melisa was in April, when she was still pregnant. He told the paper, "I met her at a friend's house in Lancaster. She was there with an old boyfriend who was mad at her, and he grabbed her by the back of her hair. I grabbed him and put him into the wall and told him if he ever hit a female in front of me again, we were going to be fighting. She went out into the hall crying, and I went out to talk to her. After that, we started seeing each other. I took her into my apartment on Charlotte Street and told her to feel at home, and everything was fine for about 2 months until we split up for about 3 days." So he's relaying to the paper, the story of how they met. She moved in with him, but then they split up. But then he said they reconciled after Melisa called him and told him that she was pregnant. Tony said, "I was so happy I was doing jumping jack. I ran home and we talked about what we were going to do."
So he was excited about being a dad.
Yeah. I mean, according to him, now this is after the fact,
sure,
but according to him, if he's being truthful, he was very excited. He also said that he told Melisa he was against her having an abortion. And she said she didn't want one. When he brought up adoption, she said she didn't want to give up her child. So if this is true, what Melisa said, then it sounds like she too, at the time this conversation occurred, wanted to have this child.
Yeah.
Now, obviously we know something changed, but we're going to have to try to figure out what that was.
And why that was.
Exactly. When one of them lost their job, they got another apartment near a hospital and a clinic. Melisa seemed like she was doing okay with her pregnancy. And then after a couple of months, they both lost their jobs when the business they were working at shut down. They also had unspecified trouble with their landlord. Okay, well, if you got no job, you're probably having a hard time paying rent. You're going to have problems with your landlord.
The landlord's not going to be happy.
No. They want that money. That's kind of their whole reason for doing what they do. Edwards talked about the problems in their relationship, stating she had some friends down in Holtwood who said we could come down and stay with them for a while. When we went to Holtwood, that was when everything went further down the drain. I'm not going to blame everything on her. Some of it was my fault too. And I found that to be a very interesting statement. You know, probably pretty truthful, because she's been arrested at the point where he's giving this interview. He could have, laid everything on her. Not about what happened to the baby. I'm talking about what happened with the relationship. Sure. He could have painted her to be, a monster, but he didn't. He actually admitted that, some of the things that went wrong in the relationship were his fault as well.
Yeah, I mean, you keep in mind she's 16 at this point, pregnant. Doesn't sound like she had a lot of support.
No, we talked about her bad home life, and he's not that old either. He's 19.
Right. What
type of jobs are they getting at 16 and 19? She only has a 9th grade education. So, and at 16 years old, you're probably talking minimum wage.
Right.
If not much more than that.
It's going to be tough, to deal with what they have to go through at that age. I mean, I don't know how you navigate through that.
But I will say this, plenty of people have done it and continue to do it.
That's true.
And if they don't want to do it, then like we said, there are a number of different avenues and options available.
Exactly.
Somebody is going to want that child. I think that's the main thing. He said that once Melisa was back in Holtwood, she started to change. She began letting loose, and he saw a different side of her. Okay, what do you make of letting loose? Because it's kind of a strange, ambiguous term.
Yeah, it just depends on what they mean by it. But I'm thinking she's 16. She's back around some friends. Maybe she's going out without him.
Yeah, to me, letting loose is either partying with alcohol and or drugs, or, maybe she's cheating on him or seeing different other people. I don't know exactly what he meant by that. But what did happen was they started fighting every day. In late January or early February, Melisa moved back in with her grandmother. Even though she was still pregnant, Melisa told her friends she had a girl and her family was taking care of her. Tony confronted her and she denied telling anyone this. So we mentioned it up front. She told a lot of different stories to different people.
Yeah. I already had the baby. It was a girl. I mean, maybe she felt she had to tell that story to justify whatever she was doing with her friends.
Or I think you can take it a step further and say that she already knew at that point in time, maybe what she was going to do. And she's planting the seeds, or, she's starting to cover her tracks and plant stories.
Pre-calculated.
Yeah, maybe. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. You know, once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. So at this point, they're living separately, but they're still talking and they're discussing baby names. But anytime they try to get back together, it just didn't work out. You ever know a couple like that?
Absolutely.
Like they can't stay away from each other.
Yeah.
They keep trying it because they want to be together so badly. They just don't know how or can't make it work.
My little brother was like that with his high school girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we always thought, why don't you guys just give it up?
Love, man.
Yeah.
Especially young love.
Yeah, for sure.
You think you can overcome whatever it is and you just keep trying and trying and trying. Eventually, I think when you're older, you see that it's not going to work out a little easier or sooner, or you make the decision sooner.
A little wiser. You're like, why am I going to put myself through all this if this is how it's always going to be?
Yeah.
Is it really worth all this stress?
Obviously, we're not compatible. Let's go our separate ways. Edward said he once brought a machete with him for defense when he went to look for Melissa at a trailer. He also admitted that he slept with women they both knew. Okay. There are a lot of ways to defend yourself. Machete seems like a strange one.
It seems a little extreme to go get a machete to protect yourself.
Yeah, it's not really something that is easily concealed.
Right.
If you're walking around a trailer park with a machete, well, people think you're a horror movie villain.
Hit me one more time and I'm going to pull this machete out of my, oh wait, it's just here in my hand. But, he's admitting, he wasn't the greatest guy in this relationship either, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, when you look at all of his statements, he was probably being pretty honest. More so than a lot of young guys would be.
Sure.
Probably about a relationship. He and Melissa had their last fight in the middle of the road near her grandmother's house. Melissa lied about staying home that night, and he told her he was leaving. Tony moved to Georgia to live with his sister and brother-in-law. He started doing masonry work and was trying to turn his life around. A state trooper then called him and told him they wanted to talk about his ex-girlfriend in connection with a homicide. He asked if Melissa was dead, and they told him an infant's body had been found. All right, that's a jarring phone call.
Sure would be.
It does sound as though he made the decision that this is not going to work. I got to do something different.
Got to move on.
I got to move on. He moved to a different state, started working, was trying to turn his life around. And then all of a sudden he gets this call. So Tony traveled to Lancaster where he took a blood test to confirm if the baby was his. The only thing that had made him happy in the past few weeks was seeing a picture of Melissa in handcuffs. He said that.
I don't know how to feel about that. I get it. He's glad to see her in handcuffs. It'd just be so hard to think about anything else at that time besides that your baby was just murdered.
Well, and I think that's why he was happy to see her in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Melissa's preliminary hearing took place on July 6, 1993, at the end of which she was ordered to stand trial. Dr. Wayne Ross testified that when he examined the infant, the body was in an orange bucket with plastic bags, a green leafy substance, towels, rags, and feminine hygiene products, according to the Intelligencer Journal. The infant had no fractures or other internal trauma. The condition of the body was more consistent with a criminal act or an accident. Ross also said that the cause of death was suffocation and the manner of death was homicide. So I found those two to be a little conflicting, right? If you say the condition of the body was more consistent with a criminal act or an accident.
Right.
But then you're saying the cause of death was suffocation, the manner of death was homicide. Well, a baby can accidentally suffocate.
It can.
But if you're labeling it a homicide, then that's no accident.
So why even include it?
Yeah, I just thought that was a little strange. Ross was asked by the ADA if he knew about a statement Melissa gave on June 26th. He said yes, and was then asked by Melissa's attorney, Greg Anthony, if he would have come to the same conclusion if he hadn't seen the statement. Ross answered that the results of criminal activity would still have been detectable. The Lancaster New Era reported that Ross did say, "I do need the statement to give you reasonable certainty." And basically this all centers around testimony from a state trooper named John Doobie, who testified that Melissa admitted the baby was hers on June 25th, 1993. Melissa's father and grandmother were not allowed to attend the preliminary hearing. Tony Edwards was told by the police that they didn't want him at the hearing because he was a potential witness.
I mean, that's very logical. I don't see anything strange about that, right?
No. I mean, you don't want anyone there who is later going to be called at a trial to testify. Roland Scott McManus told the Intelligencer Journal, as of 11:30 this morning, there was no lawyer. The way this has gone so far, I feel like she's being railroaded. So that was her father. Betty McManus said, Melissa would climb the hill to my house 2 or 3 times a day. How could she do that if she was 9 months pregnant? So again, Betty doesn't even believe she was pregnant.
Well, I mean, there's going to always be people that have denial. Part of that could be friends saying to her, why didn't you do something to help her?
Oh, because if you knew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Is there a part of her that doesn't want to admit that that is the truth, because then it puts her on the hook a little bit for not having done something, possibly, in her mind. The baby, who was named Anthony Michael Edwards, was buried in late July 1993. On July 29th of that year, the arrest warrant affidavit was opened to the public. The following information comes from an article by the Lancaster New Era. The affidavit named 3 people who Melissa claimed helped her give birth and dispose of the baby. Melissa told the police that she gave birth at a house in Holtwood in the second half of April, assisted by a teenage girl. She didn't give an exact date of birth. According to the affidavit, McManus said that after the birth of the baby, she was scared because she said she knew she couldn't keep the baby. She talked to her friends about getting rid of the baby, and they told her they would, quote, take care of it. One of her friends let her hold the baby for about 2 minutes before they put the baby into a plastic bag. Melissa asked what they would do, and they said they were going to take the baby to the river. Her friend asked if she was going to go with them, but she declined to do so because of her condition. The affidavit stated McManus said that they left the house shortly after that, and she knew the baby was not coming back.
So she had the opportunity to stop it.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Now, she didn't go because of, the condition she was in, which is quite believable.
Sure.
After giving birth, you're not going to pop up and go for a ride. And most people just don't do that. But to your point, it's very evident that she knew what was going to happen to that baby, and she went with it.
Sure. She chose not to interfere.
Yes. The friend returned and told her how the three of them went to the riverbank and dropped the baby in.
Just hearing you say that, I think, and I'm sorry, but don't you have to be a real piece of shit? I don't have a better term right now.
No, I can't think of a better one either.
For you to be one of those individuals that knew a baby was in that bag and you were okay taking it to the river and just tossing it in like trash.
Yeah, I think POS is the perfect term.
I mean, how do you sleep at night knowing that you were okay with that?
But not just okay with it, you did it. Somebody did it.
Yeah.
So there were three people there. They're all in on it, but one person literally held their hand out and dropped this bag into the water.
Yeah. And said, okay, let's go back to the car.
Yes.
Let's have a cigarette or whatever they did, right? Didn't even, mourn the loss of the child.
Now, I don't know this for a fact, but, you can formulate in your head that it may have not been to them any different than, finishing up a Diet Coke and throwing the can in the river. Well, you shouldn't do that either, but that's a far cry from throwing a baby.
If that's the case, they clearly have some major issues.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Trooper John C. Doobie told the press that only Melisa was charged at that time, and they were still verifying the information she gave them, which I understand. She's implicating other people.
Just a side note, we have a trooper, his name's Doobie, Officer Doobie,
From the, what's the movie where they make fun of the Scream movie? Is that the one that's Officer Doofy.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of Super
Troopers?
Super Troopers.
Oh, I love Super Troopers.
Officer having the name Doobie,
Okay.
Referencing,
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Sorry, off track.
Melisa was scheduled to go to trial on March 16th, 1994. Before the start of her trial, Judge Louis Farina was asked to determine if she should be treated as an adult or a juvenile.
Boy, that'd be a tough call, wouldn't it?
Yeah, back in 1993, Pennsylvania law stated that teenagers accused of criminal homicide were treated as adults unless a judge decided they could be rehabilitated by the age of 21. So back to your point, man, that's a tough decision for a judge.
Yeah.
Number one, you're dealing with a 16-year-old girl. Now, what she did was horrific, but interpreting the law or going by the law, can she be rehabilitated by the age of 21?
Yeah, because by the time they arrested her, she was 17, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they got 4 years to work with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how does a judge make that determination?
I don't know if a judge can, but has to.
Based on what?
Yeah.
The person's demeanor in court, what they said in interrogations. I don't know. Very, very tough. A psychologist testified that Melisa was now claiming she was never pregnant. Other witnesses, including family and probation officials, testified that Melisa told them she was pregnant. So I don't think that helps your case when you're waffling back and forth.
No, if you have a problem admitting what you've done at this point, I think it looks really bad. And I think the judge would say, look, you're not going to be rehabilitated in 4 years.
I would think it would help the judge make his or her decision.
Yeah.
These type of statements. ADA Heidi Eakin noted that when Melisa was sentenced in juvenile court for assaulting another girl in February 1993, she said she was pregnant. Melisa told several people she was pregnant, and people came forward and said she was visibly heavier in the spring of 93. But at some point that spring, she was no longer pregnant and told her family and probation officers that the baby was with an aunt or a friend. Melisa told her aunt she had a miscarriage. So again, back to, she's telling all kinds of different stories to different people.
And if she really wasn't pregnant, why tell those stories?
But she actually, did a lot to make people think either she wasn't pregnant or had already had the baby. Family members testified that Melisa showed them a picture of a baby, and they were either told or they assumed it was hers. Written on the back of the picture was Brittany McManus, born February 24th, 1993, 7 pounds, 10 ounces.
So she really kind of worked this alibi up.
She's selling it.
Yeah.
I mean, she went as far as getting a picture of a baby and then writing on the back of it. Melissa's aunt, Tracy Prees, testified that she never saw or cared for a baby, despite Melisa telling people that she did. So, your stories start to fall apart when the people who are in the stories, start coming out and saying, I don't know what in the heck you're talking about.
Right. I don't know anything about this.
No, you're telling people that I've been caring for this baby. I'm not caring for any baby.
But here's the sad thing. These stories that she told, I'm sure these people would have stepped up and did this anyway.
Yeah.
If she just would have.
Oh my gosh, that's such an excellent point. Your mother, your aunt, or aunt, I've said it multiple ways in this episode.
Yeah.
Friends, strangers, your neighbor. If you just went to them and said, hey, I need help, who wouldn't step in and try to help you with a baby?
Yeah. I mean, you went through all this effort to make up stuff. Just
tell the truth.
Yeah.
And ask for help.
And you wouldn't have had any of this bad stuff that happened to the baby and yourself.
I don't know. And maybe her family wasn't the type of people that would have stepped up, but most families are.
Yeah, I assume there was somebody, an aunt or somebody in her family that would have stepped up.
Yeah, and I'm going back to the fact that she didn't have a good childhood and all of that. So maybe there was something to it there. But
yeah.
Tracy also talked about Melissa's home life. She discussed an incident where Melissa's father, Roland, told her to leave the house and never come back. She was in middle school at that time. And I did say her mother would step up, but obviously that's not true because she abandoned her.
Yeah, but it sounds like her Aunt Tracy might have stepped up.
Yeah, she might have. But who tells their daughter who's in middle school, just get out and never come back? Middle school.
Middle school, yeah, that's rough, I mean,
even a high schooler, even an 18-year-old, I would never tell my daughter, hey, get out of my house and never come back.
But you know what? There's a lot of parents that do that. I know a few people that got kicked out of their house when, they were in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Ended up living with, a friend and their family.
I guess it depends on what the kids are doing and all that stuff.
What the parents' issue is, right? I mean, sometimes the parents are just bad parents. Or too strict.
I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of bad parents.
Yeah.
Just like we talk about there's bad police officers, there's bad doctors,
Sure.
There's bad teachers. There are bad parents.
And there are bad kids.
And there are some kids that are out of control.
Yeah.
But I think the point is, and you did a good job in making it, in almost every one of these situations, there are alternative avenues
Sure.
to take. And a lot of times people just, for whatever reason, don't choose those alternative avenues. They choose the worst possible thing they can do.
Yeah.
Eakin called Melisa street smart, while her attorney, Greg Anthony, described her as immature, noting how Melisa left school in the 9th grade, moved in with her boyfriend, and got pregnant at a young age. Okay, I don't know that you have to be immature to do those things.
No.
I don't know that they go hand in hand. Psychologists for the prosecution and defense agreed that Melisa suffered from a conduct disorder, A defense psychologist said that she would likely require more than 3 years of treatment. According to the Lancaster New Era, psychologist Lynn Anderson noted that a key factor in whether or not Melisa would respond to treatment was her motivation to fix her problems. However, Anderson said, I didn't see her as highly motivated.
Well, if she's not willing to admit the fact that she was pregnant
and did what she did,
there's a lack of motivation there.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who have issues that they could get help with. But at some point, don't you have to want the help and put in a little work, right? If you're not motivated, if you don't want to do this, then whatever treatment you're getting is probably not going to work that great.
Right.
Melissa's father and grandmother testified that Melisa was not pregnant. They were sticking with that. The Lancaster New Era reported that Betty testified that Melisa gained a little weight, but it was because she was eating a lot of junk food.
You know, not all women show their pregnancy the same way.
No, I remember when I was pretty young. I think I was, 18 or 19. I was working at Sam's Club, and I worked with this woman. She was in her late 20s or something. And one day she told me she was 6 months pregnant. And I literally had no idea she was pregnant at all.
Yeah.
She was still wearing like the same jeans that she had been wearing for a long time. So not sure how that is, but I do agree with you. The showing part does happen a little differently for different people.
Sure.
But is this also a case of grandma not really realizing what's going on?
Yeah, it could be, and some form of denial.
Could be denial as well. Okay, she's eating a lot of junk food. I just chalked it up to that. Roland Scott McManus looked at photos of Melisa in the winter of 92, 93 and said she looked a little overweight, but not pregnant. He claimed he never noticed her stomach growing. ADA Eakin asked him, isn't it a fact that you knew your daughter was pregnant and she delivered it upstairs in her room with the assistance of your mother and you? To which he responded, don't put words in my mouth. Okay, so now we might be getting into a little different territory.
Sure.
And different reasoning for why dad and grandma don't want to admit that they knew she was pregnant.
Because if what the ADA is saying,
they're trying to cover something up.
Yeah, they're involved.
He also denied disposing of the baby. He said that he had no control over Melisa running away to live with her friends, but he would never have allowed her to get pregnant.
Well, I don't know how you not allow someone to get pregnant.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to stop.
Yeah.
Unless you're with them 24/7. Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. Folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Eakin also suggested to Betty that she was the one who delivered the baby. Betty denied this and said, "I know I was accused by the troopers. If they questioned her," meaning Melisa, "the way they questioned me, I would have admitted it too." So this assistant district attorney's not really pulling any punches.
They're not holding back.
No, going after the father, the grandmother. Betty testified that Melisa didn't always see eye to eye with her father and that she ran away from home 5 to 6 times. She also said that her father had beaten her a few times. Now, what's a few? I actually had somebody leave a voicemail regarding an older episode where we were talking about what is several, what is a few,
right?
What does that mean to, it means something different to different people.
Sure. I think when you say a few times, it's greater than 3.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too.
But also have to think, if what she's saying's true, then the dad is another POS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beating his child. That we know these beatings had to occur when she was 16 or younger.
Yeah, I'm taking that word, beaten, to be much more than any type of discipline that any of us would be comfortable with. When you say you beat someone,
it's abuse.
Yeah, to me that is definitely abuse. Now, she doesn't elaborate on it and say exactly what it is, but that's the way I'm taking it. 2 investigators testified that when they talked to Melisa, she gave 5 different stories about what happened. At first, she said she did have a baby, but the baby found in the river was not hers. In another interview, she said the baby was hers and she or friends disposed of the body. The following information comes from both the Intelligencer Journal and Lancaster New Era. At the hearing, Trooper Joseph Joy talked about different statements Melisa gave. State Troopers Joy and Doobie found Melisa at an apartment in Reading on May 12th. She showed them a photo of a baby girl she claimed was born at 1:30 a.m. on February 24th at the Lancaster General Hospital. She said her aunt and uncle, Tracy and Mark Prees, were taking care of the baby until she got a job. So this is where it comes in where her Aunt Tracy says, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about because I wasn't taking care of no baby."
Right. There was no baby here.
The troopers returned a couple hours later to confront Melisa with a lack of hospital records and the fact that her aunt and uncle denied taking care of the baby. Tracy said she thought Melisa had a miscarriage. Melisa said they had the baby, but they weren't telling anyone because they feared Tony Edwards would show up. Melisa agreed to allow the police to access her medical records and said that the birth certificate was at her grandmother's home. And Gibbs, I know we've talked about this before, but you've got a 16-year-old girl, probably pretty scared.
Sure.
Being interviewed by investigators. What is she doing? She's doing what a lot of people do, telling a bunch of different stories, many of which conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if, this is the feeling that I get, people think that if they just keep talking, if they just keep crafting a narrative, they're going to get to a story that the police will believe.
Yeah, it's like sitting in my living room when I was younger, listening to my kids try to convince me why they didn't do something that I already knew they have done.
Right. And okay, somebody else did it.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't even here at the time. I mean, you can just go down the list of all these excuses and that obviously they can't all be true. And so, I think as an investigator, it's not too hard to see through, what she's trying to do.
Sure.
After she was confronted by the police, Melisa said that once in the summer of 1992, her boyfriend beat her. She didn't know she was pregnant at the time. She locked herself into the bathroom and gave birth to a girl who was small but fully formed. She said she flushed the baby down the toilet. And according to Joseph Joy, she said she felt really sad about this. So now this is a completely different story.
Yeah.
So Joy testified that he asked Melisa about the reports that she was pregnant after this alleged miscarriage. Melisa denied having a second pregnancy, but then she talked about having a baby at a friend's house. Neither she nor her friend knew what to do. She claimed the baby was a girl, but she never moved and was apparently dead. And she went on to say that her friend and that friend's boyfriend took the baby to a hospital where the baby was pronounced dead, but she didn't know which hospital or what happened to the baby. So again, multiple stories that just seem to conflict with each other. Not all of this stuff can be true.
No, it's all over the place. And part of me is thinking, did she have another pregnancy that she never told anybody
But she said she didn't. That was the thing. She told the trooper she didn't have a second pregnancy.
And I'm sorry, but if someone has a baby and you're the friend that takes it to the hospital, I don't think you're going to drive too far away from where you're at. You know, I mean, you can look at any city
and figure out
how many hospitals and what hospitals nearby that location
and check them out.
Yeah, in most cities, there's only one hospital anyway. Some cities have more, but
yeah, depending on how big the city is.
Sure.
But I think for me, at the root of it is you have a 16-year-old who has no idea what to do and is just throwing stuff out.
Making herself look worse and worse.
Yeah, but I think in her mind, she's thinking she's going to hit upon something.
Yeah.
That the police are going to say, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That everything's wrapped up. And obviously it's never going to work that way. The next interview took place on June 25th at the Reading Barracks with Detective Raymond Solt. Melisa failed a lie detector test and minutes later admitted that the baby found in the river was hers.
It took all that to get to that spot.
She told Detective Solt that on April 30th, 1993, she walked to a friend's house in Mardick Township at 8 p.m. and had the baby an hour and a half later. She held him for a few minutes. Her friends told her to dump the baby because her family didn't know she was pregnant. The baby was wrapped in a jacket and then put in a bag. She and two friends walked to the river and left him there. They talked about someone finding the baby who was alive when he was put in the bag. Now, later on, we've already mentioned it, right? Melisa said she didn't go to the river, but instead her three friends did. She also said Tony Edwards was there when she gave birth, and then later on said he wasn't.
So in this case, we know she's a habitual liar.
I mean, it does sound like that for sure. And it sounds like she was that way before her arrest and interrogation. Remember, go back, she was telling people all kinds of different stories, almost as if in preparation for her giving birth. Melisa explained that she didn't keep the baby because she couldn't raise him alone. She didn't have a job, and she couldn't take him home because her family never believed she was pregnant. She told the detective, I want you to understand that if I could have, I would have kept my baby. Couldn't take him home because her family never believed she was pregnant.
Well, guess what? When you bring him home, they're going to understand that you had to be pregnant.
That here's the proof that I was pregnant. So yeah, that statement didn't make any sense to me at all. I get it. You don't have a job. You're on your own. But I go back to what we talked about earlier. There are so many different avenues to take that don't involve killing this baby.
Most hospitals have social service workers that will come in right away if you need help and figure out a plan, somewhere to place the baby.
Like you said, the fire department.
Or just go,
The old movie trope, which is, people drop their child off at the fire department. I just don't know. People are going to have such trouble just like we are, with the decision-making process and how she came to this point to think, well, this is my only option.
Yeah.
You're just never going to make sense of it because it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I get it. She was 16, but she was old enough to know.
Number one, that it was wrong. And number two, that there were other things.
Yeah, there's options.
That she could have done. According to the Intelligencer Journal, Melissa's attorney, Greg Anthony, argued she is not criminally responsible for the death of the child found in the Susquehanna. The Commonwealth's evidence is insufficient to prove that she is.
That's kind of like saying, I hired this hit man to kill somebody. I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't pull the trigger, but I told him to go ahead and do it. I mean, if she's telling her friends to go ahead and take the baby and get rid of it, what's the difference?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think what this defense attorney is trying to do is say that the state, the Commonwealth, hasn't proven that she did that. The prosecution argued that Melissa's actions before and after her son's birth showed her chosen pattern of antisocial behavior, and she would be resistant to rehabilitation in the juvenile system. She also noted that Melissa changed her story to try to shift the blame away from her. Eakin said that Melissa could not be rehabilitated within the relevant time period, and that combined with her heartless conduct and cover-up showed that she should be tried as an adult.
And I understand what they're saying, because she really is. She's not taking any accountability for what happened. She seems to be in complete denial.
Is she in denial, or does she know what she did and she's just trying to wiggle out of it? That I don't know.
Yeah, but
I kind of lean towards the latter, to be honest with you.
She could be trying to wiggle out of it, but while she's trying to wiggle, the authorities are watching that wiggle, thinking, how can we feel comfortable with you going through the juvenile system thinking that you will be okay when you're done? Because you're having a problem admitting anything at this point.
Well, and the judge agreed. On April 25th, 1994, Judge Louis Farina ruled that Melissa would be tried as an adult. Melissa requested a non-jury trial because her attorneys didn't believe she would receive a fair trial with a jury. And this, to me, kind of goes back to something you said very early on. And it centers around how angry people get with this notion of someone killing a child, in this instance, a baby. Okay, maybe you don't want a jury. What jury is going to be sympathetic to her?
I don't think anyone would.
No, but maybe you're better off just taking your chances with the judge who is more likely to rule on the specific merits of the case. And,
right.
And, can the state prove what they're contending?
And check their emotions to decide.
Versus a jury who is going to look at her and say, well, she must have done it because she lied to all these people. And
look at her. She doesn't even look like she's sorry about it.
Yeah, that could be as well. Melissa's trial started on May 3rd, 1994. The prosecution argued that the murder was premeditated, while the defense argued that Melissa was too young to be in her right mind when she killed her son. Okay, that's an argument that I don't know that we've heard. Now, we've heard people say, my client wasn't in his or her right mind, but it normally is referencing some type of mental illness.
Sure.
But to say that she was simply too young to know what she was doing, I don't think 16 is too young to know that killing a baby is wrong.
No, I don't think so either.
Just that alone.
Yeah.
If that's what he's trying to say, I think that's a tough argument to make. Melissa's defense also argued that she was not guilty because there was insufficient evidence that she was pregnant and that the baby was hers. Defense attorney Greg Anthony questioned if the child was born alive. He also said Melissa's confession was not reliable because it contained false statements. For example, Melissa named 3 people whom she claimed helped her get rid of the baby, but the police believed they were not culpable. Okay, now these arguments he's making, I understand. The too young, that one doesn't strike a chord with me, but these do.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
The prosecution doesn't have enough evidence. Can they even prove that the baby was born alive? Because that's a big difference.
It is a big difference.
As far as what would happen to her. And how reliable is her confession? Because she's a known liar. She told 8-10 different versions.
Right.
So which one's correct? So I understand, going that route. Over a dozen witnesses testified that Melisa talked about being pregnant, discussed baby names, and even let people touch her stomach. I know some women are okay with that. Some are not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to vary.
I do know the one thing you shouldn't do is assume that someone is okay with that.
Yeah. I think you have to ask first, especially
and
since COVID.
It's such a weird question. Do you mind if I touch your stomach?
Yeah. I don't know why they would want to do that.
I don't want anybody touching my stomach.
Yeah. You get asked all the time.
I do. I think people think it's good luck or something. Anthony Edwards testified that he learned about the pregnancy in the summer of 1992. He put his ear against Melissa's stomach and felt the baby kick. He also said their relationship soured when he got involved with Melissa's twin sister, Wendy.
Well, that will definitely sour your relationship.
Yeah, sour is probably not a strong enough word, but...
did he say, oh, I thought it was you because it was her twin?
Try to play it off like that. Melissa told him she gave birth on February 20th, but refused to let him see the baby. He called domestic relations, hospitals in Lancaster, and Melissa's doctor to try to locate his child. Melissa then said her aunt and uncle were taking care of the baby, and she visited twice a week. Man, she's really throwing this aunt and uncle out.
She really is.
Under the bus. Now, it's not too hard for them to come back under oath and say, no, we never took care of this baby.
We would have been happy to, but no, she never gave us that option.
Wendy Lee testified that she took a photo of her sister in the shower where she looked pregnant. Months later, she saw Melissa in their bedroom and she was no longer pregnant. She even said, look, I can suck my gut in, according to Wendy. Melissa showed her a photo of a baby named Brittany and said she was with their Aunt Tracy. After the baby was found in the river, Wendy received letters from Melissa. According to the Intelligencer Journal, Wendy testified in one of them, she said it was hers, but she didn't do it. The other two said she was never pregnant. So I don't know what the hell to believe. That's probably the most honest statement anyone has made in this entire case. Because with all of the different stories that Melissa told, it would be hard to know what to believe. Now, after the fact, I think it's pretty easy to understand what happened.
And this is her twin. They always say twins know each other so well. Mm-hmm. For her own twin to say, I don't know what the hell is going on here, says a lot.
This is also your twin that slept with your boyfriend. So you got to factor that in as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how many twins would sleep with their other twins' boyfriend or girlfriend on purpose. You have to put that part in. Other witnesses said Melissa seemed happy about her pregnancy, but after she broke up with Edwards, she showed no interest in getting things for the baby and didn't even want to talk about her pregnancy. By April 1993, Melissa was in another relationship with 20-year-old Paul Craig Leonard Jr. Leonard testified that he saw stretch marks on Melissa's body, and she said that she had a baby. According to the Intelligencer Journal, on May 4th, the police testified about Melissa's recantation of her confession. According to a state trooper, Melissa said, the whole statement was made up. I'm telling you now, I never had a child in my life. So apparently she renounced her confession on June 29th when she was charged with murder. Melissa spoke with Trooper Doobie. She said she was tired of lying and tried to trap her boyfriend by telling him she was pregnant and wearing padding. She offered names of people who could verify she was never pregnant. I mean, I'm telling you, the thing that keeps running through my head is, the number of different ways that she went about trying to snow the police.
Yeah, she's really trying to discredit this pregnancy piece, but not doing a very good job at it.
Well, because if she was never pregnant, then the baby wasn't hers and therefore she can't be guilty. Dr. Wayne Ross testified on the 4th and said that the autopsy, the way the body was found, and Melissa's statements led him to conclude the baby died of suffocation. He believed the baby was alive when he was born and was carried to full term. There were no signs of injury, illness, or birth defects. The way the umbilical cord was cut indicated he wasn't born in a hospital. The defense questioned him about his reliance on police reports and statements, which I understand that they would do, right? He is coming to a conclusion based on certain things.
Right.
So the defense is going to have to hammer that pretty hard. A forensic scientist testified that the blood on the waste paper basket and the feminine hygiene product found with it was type AB, which is Melissa's blood type. A molecular biologist testified that decomposition prevented conclusive DNA testing of the baby, but Melissa and Anthony Edwards couldn't be excluded as parents. So that's interesting, right? Because you kind of assumed that this would be an easy thing.
Sure.
Verifying that the baby found was Melissa's. But then you find out that decomposition prevented it. Now, this was the early 90s.
Right.
So would that still be the case today? I don't know, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah,
I'm sure technology is advanced where they would be able to do it. A defense pathologist testified that it was more likely the baby was stillborn. According to the Lancaster New Era, Dr. Neil Hoffman, the defense's only witness, testified that a stillbirth was possible because the baby had an excessively long umbilical cord, which, according to his testimony, increases the risk of death at birth. Another suggestion was a lack of bleeding in the scalp, which possibly indicated no circulation at birth. So not strange that, the different experts and scientists disagree, because that's what we normally see.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some unknown factors there that you could go either way with that theory.
Well, I think that's what jumps out at me. Both of these people are making a lot of speculation.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think either one of them is able to prove one way or the other.
No.
So there's no jury, which means it's going to be up to the judge, right, to weigh all the evidence and rule. Testimony concluded on May 5th, and both sides gave their closing arguments. ADA Heidi Eakin argued that there was overwhelming evidence Melissa was pregnant, and she came to view her pregnancy with disgust after Anthony Edwards became sexually involved with her sister. Gregory Anthony said that there was little evidence besides Melissa's confession that the baby was hers, and that confession was unreliable because it contained lies and false accusations against the people she claimed helped her get rid of the baby. So before we get into the ruling, to me, this is a different type of trial, very circumstantial. And we do have a lot of trials that are circumstantial, but
we do.
This is a very circumstantial trial. I mean, there is very little in the way of physical evidence. I'm assuming most people thought early on that DNA would connect the baby as being hers. They couldn't do it.
Right, so that causes a problem.
And the defense is bringing up some valid points.
Yeah.
How do you know, or have you proven that the baby was hers?
Yeah, and the prosecution feels like it's done a good job proving in their eyes that she was pregnant.
Yes.
And there's no account for the baby anywhere besides the one they found in the river.
Well, and I always think a confession is big, so
Sure.
The defense is trying to battle that confession by saying, well, you really can't rely on it because yes, she confessed, but she also said a bunch of other things, which we detailed out. And so obviously not all that stuff is true. So what is true? It basically is what they're saying. On May 6, 1994, Melisa McManus was found guilty of first-degree murder and criminal conspiracy. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 5 to 10 years for conspiracy.
When you think about that, That's a really long sentence.
That is a really long sentence for a really horrible, heinous crime.
Absolutely it is.
And I don't think anyone would have a problem with it. Now, I guess if anybody does, it would only probably center around her age.
Yes.
Being 16, there might be some people who feel like, life with no parole is too harsh. As reported by the Intelligencer Journal, the judge told her, "I only hope as you go to prison, you will make something useful of your life, as limited as it will be there. Good luck to you." Okay, pretty short and sweet.
Sure, yeah.
This wasn't the judge to Bundy saying, "You'd have made a hell of a lawyer. I would have loved to have you practice in front of me, but you went a different way, partner," I think is what he said.
Yeah. You chose a different path.
Yeah, this is a little bit different. Many years later, on June 25th, 2012, the Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles could constitute cruel and unusual punishment. Melisa McManus was one of several inmates who filed appeals to the state Superior Court. These appeals were filed in anticipation of the Supreme Court opinion. On January 25th, 2016, the Supreme Court ruled that the 2012 ruling should be retroactive and juveniles sentenced under mandatory laws should have an opportunity for resentencing or to seek parole. 41-year-old Melisa McManus was resentenced to 25 years to life on November 9th, 2017. Judge Dennis Reinicker accepted a plea agreement between her attorney and the Lancaster County DA's office. According to Lancaster Online, Melisa cried as she told the judge, "Not a day goes by that I don't think about my son. I don't know how to forgive myself. I try." She also said, according to Local 21 News, "I don't know how to forgive myself. I really didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just didn't understand it." So we talked about her life sentence with no parole. I really didn't have that big a problem with it. I also don't have a problem at all with the Supreme Court ruling overturning that and her getting resentenced. I don't have a problem with that. What I want to do, though, is I want to analyze some of these statements that she made. She's no longer a kid. She's 41 years old. She's making some good statements, right? Not a day goes by I don't think about my son. She tells multiple outlets that she can't forgive herself, but she does say, "I really didn't mean to hurt anyone." And I don't know how to take that. How did you not know that you were going to be hurting someone?
Yeah, for her to make that statement as an adult, I think she's looking back as herself as a child, a 16-year-old, thinking, I didn't realize it was going to have the impact that it did, because she, maybe in her mind, she's trying to find an excuse for her younger self.
I think so, but I have a hard time buying it.
Yeah, well, I do too.
Because you and I both had kids who were at one time 16 years old.
Sure.
And I think about them, and I know not every child is the same. Not every kid's the same, but I think about them at 16 and they would have known.
Absolutely.
What effect that action was going to have. Now, maybe she didn't, or maybe like you said, she's trying to soften her 16-year-old self now at 41.
Maybe it's the only way she can
live with herself. It could be.
Sleep, get a good night, get a night of sleep.
Yeah, it could be. Melissa's attorney, Kay Spott, said that Melisa did not spend her time doing nothing. She got a GED, participated in the prison's dog program, and got certifications in things like upholstery and plumbing. She was also going to complete beautician school and planned to get a license in that field when she was released. Spott said that Melisa was introspective and experienced daily guilt for what she did. She also revealed that Melisa didn't feel ready to reintegrate into society right away, so she planned to go to a halfway house after her release and would also participate in her mandatory counseling.
I always like how we talk about the inmates doing this and, attending that. Well, you know what? They're in prison. If they choose to do something or not do something, that's on them, but they have these resources that are being paid by taxpayers that a lot of people on the outside don't have those type of resources. So the fact that she took advantage of those, great. But I'm not going to be like, good for you,
Yeah.
It's just like, they're there for you. You should take advantage of them. And if you don't, okay.
You should, but if you're weighing two individuals in the same circumstance, one is doing all of these things in prison and the other one is shanking people.
Well, yeah, I get that.
That is going to play into whether you're going to get paroled.
Yeah.
And now, would she have done all that stuff if she had a life sentence with no parole? If it had not been overturned? Maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But sometimes I think they get too much credit for that.
Yeah, I get you. Lancaster Online reported that Judge Raniker told Melisa, "You're being given a second chance. Good luck, Miss McManus." According to the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, inmate and parolee locator, Melissa's release date was June 30th, 2018. So she was released almost 5 years ago. She did what, Gibbs? Help me with my math. 25 years in prison. Is that right?
Sounds about right.
So, people can argue, is that long enough for what she did? And I think the argument can be made because she was only 16 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
If this is a full-blown adult, I'm probably not real happy with her being let out at 25 years.
But with that being said, we've seen murderers get out earlier.
Oh, way earlier.
So, the good news is she rehabilitated herself in prison.
Hopefully.
Yeah, she's either out there doing someone's hair or redoing your couch or who knows what she's doing. But she's out there and she's paid her dues.
She did pay her dues as what, per what was required of her.
Yeah.
People may argue that it wasn't long enough, or people may say, yeah, they're fine with that.
Yeah.
You can go either way. What I will say is I really didn't find much after this. So maybe it does seem as though she's kept her nose clean. You would hope somebody would when they're given that type of second chance.
Yeah. And probably a case like this, I wouldn't be surprised when she came out if she changed her name.
Well, that could be as well. So, as we're wrapping up this case, there's one big topic that we haven't explored yet. And it's the accomplices who Melisa said, helped her deliver the baby, were the ones that actually, disposed of the baby's body in the river. Who are these people? Were they real? Because they've never been named.
Right.
They've never been charged. I even think we said police don't believe that they either exist or that they were culpable in any way. There was one part in her confession, I believe, where she said she walked down to the river.
Right.
And, dropped the baby into the water. So there is still a lot of kind of uncertainty around that one part. I tend to think it's just another one of her stories.
I think so too, because if these individuals existed, I think the authorities would have made some type of effort.
They would have figured out who they were.
Yeah. So the fact that no one was ever charged makes you feel like it was fabricated.
Yeah, I think so.
But if they did exist,
shame on them.
Shame on, and I think they would deserve the same amount of time that she received, if not greater, for the person that actually held the bag out and allowed the bag to fall into the water.
Drop the bag. But there's no doubt the Melisa McManus case remains a controversial topic. Even back in 1993, local papers received letters from readers who felt like her sentence was unfair, but there were many who thought justice was served when she was sentenced to life without parole. It's kind of what we were talking about, right? People are going to be in different camps, and this debate continues today. But there's one thing that no one can deny, and that's that Melisa McManus committed a horrific crime against her newborn son. That part you can't argue with.
No, you can't.
You can argue whether the sentence was fair, she should have ever gotten out. People are entitled to their opinion on that, but what this girl did, and I And granted, she was 16 years old. I'm not taking that into account, but what she did was just so horrific.
I think if she was 21, the argument would not be there.
It would be different. It definitely would be different for me.
Yeah.
I would be much harsher on her if that's even possible, because I feel pretty rough against her anyway, even though she was only 16.
Well, she did her time. She's out in the real world now. Hopefully she learned her lesson and she's just being a good citizen.
Yeah, hopefully she does do something with her life.
And she finds a way to come to peace with what she did.
I don't know how you do that, man. I don't know how you find peace with that, but I don't know. Got to live with it.
Sure.
You got to live with it. But that's it for our episode on Melisa McManus. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, it's Kirsten from Spokane. Also Spokompton is what we call it around here. You actually did a podcast about the South Hill rapist, which is interesting because I live on the South Hill. I'm going to send you an email about Bobby Sue Terrell. She was a serial killer, but she was a nurse, and she actually had, I believe, schizophrenia. So anyway, it's really interesting. She was actually judged insane, supposedly, but I thought maybe you guys could give it a look. So yeah.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail. I'll look for the email, and we'll definitely put that on the list.
Yeah, spoken.
Spoken?
Uh-huh.
Is that how we're saying it now?
I don't know.
Because that's not how I'm saying it.
Hi, this is Riley. So every time I listen to one of your guys' shows and you guys say, well, they went out to relieve themselves either on the side of the road or in some random parking lot or something, and they stumble upon a dead body, my first thought is always, I wonder if they went ahead and relieved themselves, or if they tried to zip back up and went and called police, or if they just went in their pants. Like, I don't know why, but that's always been the curiosity that I have every time you guys say that. Because I know there's some times where I wouldn't be able to hold it. And, well, it just kind of makes you wonder. Anyways, food for thought. Love you guys. Keep your own time ticking.
Hey, sometimes you got to go when you got to go.
Well, you got to go, but I think you also, if you're going to interact with the police, I think you got to zip up. My question is, how the hell did you get the beans above the frank?
That really hurts.
Yeah.
And don't hold it. I held it one time. It did not turn out well for me.
Oh, you know that's bad for you.
Oh, I know.
To hold your pee.
Remember when I took a face plant into the urinal?
Yeah.
Did we tell that
That's
story?
both funny and tragic.
It was very tragic. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever told that story. Let's save that one for another episode.
Probably ought to.
Hi, I'm JJ. I just wanted to give you guys a call. I'm actually a law enforcement officer in Tennessee, and I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I really love how neutral you guys stay when it comes to telling the story, and also, not implying anyone's guilt, even if they are. And if they are, you guys are very clear and deliberate in how you present it. And you guys do a great job. So thanks.
Wow. Very to the point. Nice. Yeah. Made me feel good.
She's nice until she doesn't.
Until it's time to not be nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Officer JJ or Detective JJ or Trooper JJ. I don't know.
We don't know. We just know she's in law
Yeah.
enforcement. But we appreciate the voicemail. We had no mailbag, Gibbs. So that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Inspired by the hit Wondery podcast Against the Odds comes the gripping guidebook, How to Survive Against the Odds, Tales and Tips for Animal Attacks and Natural Disasters. This might just be the most important book you'll ever read. Go inside life or death situations where everyday people survived nature's most extreme scenarios, and learn how you can too. In these tales, you'll hear about the grit, willpower, and know-how needed to endure shipwrecks, alligator attacks, earthquakes, and more. You'll learn from experts, including top doctors, about what happens to your body and mind in life-threatening situations. Plus, important tips on what to do, and equally important, what not to do when faced with a situation that is truly against the odds. Go to survivalguidebook.com to pre-order How to Survive Against the Odds today and get the perfect gift in time for graduation and Father's Day.